La 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 la. Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for an album review. This artist's name is Kuedo, the album is Severant. Kuedo is the pseudonym for electronic music producer Jamie Teasdale, who I first heard of a couple years ago when I was looking up dubstep songs on the internet, and I came across his In System Travels EP. Own a vinyl copy of it too. Highly recommend it. 3 great tracks on that thing. This dude is also one half of the dubstep duo Vex'd, and they spent their last album, playing some dubstep, but experimenting with ambient music too. So now we have this new solo release from Jamie. He's already released some EPs under this name, one of which kind of takes the dubstep style and filters it through 8-bit sounds. And, I'm just kind of setting this up because I think it's funny that now that dubstep is kind of like this hot electronic music commodity, he's kind of taken a break from the style on this thing. But in a good way. But after listening to this thing again and again and again, I kind of feel like Severant is really limited. Definitely an intentional limitation. And that's because Jamie has made a conscious decision to use these kinds of synth sounds and these kinds of drum sounds and execute them in this way. Instead of huge variations between tracks, this album is more about taking a single idea and exploring every single nook and cranny of it. What I have to talk about first, what sticks out to me the most about this album, is definitely the rhythms, the drum machines. They're really light, tinny, thin, fast. They've got this like rattling, jittery quality to them that's commonly found in JUKE music or footwork music, and it's like totally not uncommon for the snare drums or the hi-hats at a lot of points on this thing to just be going like rapid fire, like there are only a handful of songs on here like the intro and Reality Drifts and Salt Lake Cuts and a few kind of interlude tracks that ease up on the rhythms. Those tracks actually to me are the less exciting ones because without these rhythms in the background of these tracks, I feel like this album loses a unique quality. The drums on this thing are really dry, they're clickety, they're clackety. And they should sound that way because they kind of sound like they're getting programmed on an old school drum machine. That old school feel gets strengthened in the synthesizers on this LP because they totally sound like this instrumental soundtrack progressive synth music that would back up an old sci-fi movie, something from the 70s, something from the 80s. There are newer artists who have championed this sound again and again and again, like Zombie or Zombie members Major or Steve Moore. And of course there's tons of older stuff like this to reference back to, like Jean-Michel Jarre, Tangerine Dream, Vangelis, of course, that Blade Runner soundtrack. You've basically got these really tense juke and footwork rhythms working against these synthesizer soundscapes. Now this album, synthesizer-wise, compositionally, I just don't find as gripping. I feel like a lot of the songs here are built on a really simple phrase or arpeggio, and it's just repeated ad nauseum, or it changes so subtly that it's hard to pick up. And sometimes the synths just bleed over each other and layer over each other for a kind of hazy effect. Overall, they just kind of end up being this side dish to the rhythms for me. There are spots on here like Truth Flood, which use this just really kind of tired chord progression that just doesn't really do anything for me, and I just see myself ignoring it and just observing the rhythms instead. Some of these tracks to me just feel like they fall in the background. They just feel unintrusive, and I guess that's the nature of the soundtrack style that Jamie is embracing on this thing. I get that maybe that is intentional on some level. The reasons I like this thing is because I do like that combination of these two ideas. There are a handful of tracks on here where I think it's executed really well. I do kind of have a soft spot for these old school synthesizer odysseys. They just feel so epic, they feel so spacey to me. They really put my head in a different place. As a total package, I think this thing is a little rough, but artistically, Jamie really moved in an interesting direction on this one. I'm feeling a strong 6 to a light 7 on this one. Definitely not one of my favorites of the year, but if I didn't think there was an interesting idea going on here, I wouldn't have reviewed it. I would love for you guys to check this thing out. Let me know what you think. Love it, hate it, why, and what should I review next? Anthony Fantano, Kuedo, forever.